It's about time we got a manhwa adaptation by a Korean studio. Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm the Average Otaku, and today I wanted to talk about Lookism, the latest Netflix anime. I'm saying anime in quotations because this is actually animated by a Korean studio instead of a Japanese one. So what is Lookism, and why is its adaptation so important? So Lookism is an extremely popular manhwa on Webtoon created by Tae-joon Park. Manhwa, in a very basic sense, is just a Korean version of manga. So in the US we have comics, in Japan we have manga, and in Korea we have manhwa. Other than the country of origin, manhwa and manga have some key differences. For one, manhwa is fully in color, kind of similar to comics in the US, as opposed to manga, which is black and white. The most important difference, I would say, is the way that it is read. Manhwa is meant to be read digitally on phones. Manhwa is usually published on apps like Webtoon and Tapas, and every chapter is an endless scroll. So instead of reading right to left like you would with manga, a manhwa is an endless scroll, so you actually read from top to bottom. It's definitely a unique way of reading, and it's pretty convenient to just be able to pull out your phone and quickly read a chapter. On top of that, most manhwa are completely free to read on their respective apps. Like, I could read all of Lookism right now if I wanted to on the Webtoon app on my phone. With its easy accessibility, manhwa has grown really popular really fast. It started off with many manga readers trying out their first manga, whether it was Solo Leveling, Tower of God, The Breaker, or even Lookism. As they grew in popularity, it started to garner the interest of animation studios. This looked like it could be the next big thing, and they all wanted a part of it. Even Crunchyroll began to show interest in manhwa. This all culminated in Crunchyroll announcing an anime adaptation for the popular webtoon Tower of God. Notice I said anime? Well, that's because it was created by a Japanese anime studio, and even the characters in the show spoke Japanese. So while the source material was Korean, the adaptation was done by an anime studio, essentially making it an anime. The Tower of God anime released in spring of 2020 and was extremely popular and well liked. In fact, it was the second most popular anime of the season after Kaguya-sama Season 2. Then for the summer 2020 season, Crunchyroll teamed up with Studio Mappa to make an adaptation for God of Highschool. This ended up becoming really popular too, being the third most popular anime of the season after Re:Zero Season 2 and Rent-A-Girlfriend. While Tower of God was created by a smaller anime studio, God of Highschool was created by Studio Mappa, who at the time had created Kakegurui, Dorohedoro, and Yuri on Ice. This was a really positive sign for manhwa, as it showed big studios were really willing to take a risk to adapt them. There's a little bit of a break in between adaptations being announced, but just recently Solo Leveling, the most popular manhwa of all time, got an anime adaptation announcement. This would be done by A1 Pictures, which again is a really big anime studio. It needs so many popular anime such as Sword Art Online, Erased, Kaguya-sama, and Fairy Tail. Honestly, when it comes out, depending on the season, it could be the most popular anime. So the first two manhwa adaptations that have come out are by Japanese anime studios, with the third on its way. And honestly, it's not a bad idea for manhwa to take this route when getting adaptations. Anime studios are known for their animation quality and how well they can adapt source material. I can imagine though that Korean fans are probably disappointed that all their adaptations are in Japanese instead of Korean. I mean, it's a shame there hasn't been any adaptations by Korean studios. Well, that was until Lookism just released on Netflix a few weeks ago. I remember seeing this on the Netflix app and watching the trailer before it was released. I was pleasantly surprised to see that all the characters were speaking Korean, and when I looked at the cast, all the names were also Korean. It was honestly pretty cool seeing a manhwa be adapted by a Korean studio, and it was also cool to see that Netflix was backing it. I actually had read a bit of the Lookism webtoon and I didn't really care for it, so I wasn't really planning on watching the animation. Eventually though, my little sister, who's a really big webtoon fan, really wanted to watch it and convinced me to watch it with her. It was only 8 episodes long and wasn't a really big time investment, so I ended up watching it. So the basic story of Lookism follows Daniel Park, a short, unattractive, and overweight student who's often bullied by his peers. By the way, these are the words being used in the official description, so please don't get mad at me for using them. Anyways, as an attempt to escape his bullies and start fresh, he decides to transfer to a new school. Just days before his transfer, he wakes up to find himself in a new perfect body. Tall, handsome, and fit, now Daniel is the ideal version of himself. There's only one issue though. His original body is still out there. It turns out whenever one body goes to sleep, he switches to the other one. Now having to deal with two completely different bodies, Daniel must figure out a way to navigate his new school life. While the premise seemed pretty cool and interesting, the animation didn't live up to it, and I ended up being pretty disappointed. So let's start off with what I did like about it. The first thing I did like was the mechanics behind the body switching. That was pretty cool, and I really like how they established rules for how the bodies would switch, so Daniel kind of could figure out how to take advantage of this. I was honestly really interested to see what the show would do with this concept. Another thing I liked was the opening. It was pretty well animated, and the music was made by a K-pop group, which I thought was a pretty nice touch. The animation was serviceable. It was different in style from anime, and I don't really necessarily think that's a bad thing. It definitely wasn't as refined or high quality as you'd expect from like a high budget anime, and that was kind of expected. And now for the negatives, which was the story itself. As you can tell from the description, Lookism deals with heavy topics such as bullying in society and school. And to be honest, I don't think they handled these topics very well. Instead of addressing these topics properly, this ends up being more of like a fighting anime. We see Daniel, who used to be bullied at his old school, and people who looked at him would be disgusted and make faces at him. He then gets a new body and goes to a new school, and now suddenly everyone wants to be his friends, and the people that would have bullied him like him. So naturally you would think that the story would be about Daniel showing these people the error of their ways and that they should be nice to people regardless of how they look. That isn't quite what happens though. Instead, what we get is Daniel getting into fights with different characters over misunderstandings and them never learning anything. The show kind of just switches gears to be a fighting show where all these characters want to take down the new handsome transfer student. The fights don't even have to do with bullying half the time, and a lot of them are just created by misunderstandings. Of course though, in Daniel's new body, he's super strong and able to fend off anyone who comes after him. In a way, this is kind of just like a power fantasy. Like, instead of reincarnation into a different world, the MC wakes up in a new powerful, overpowered body. He's strong enough to fight off any kid at the school, and every girl is in love with him. I think that really weakens the show, going more into the power fantasy and fighting direction, instead of taking a more serious, nuanced look at bullying. When the show finally decides to focus on bullying, we just see a character get bullied for like half an episode, and finally Daniel will come in and save the day. In fact, the bullying kind of just feels cheap. It seems like it's almost there to make you feel sympathy for the characters, and then make you feel really satisfied when Daniel comes in and saves the day. It honestly doesn't feel like the story tackles bullying properly, and instead uses it as a device for Daniel to be able to fight people, as well as to make you dislike or like a character. And that brings me to the next part I didn't really like, which were the characters. A lot of the times, the characters and the motivations didn't really make sense. Like, you would see a character who's mean to ugly people, and then suddenly a few episodes later, they're nicer, but without any proper character development. In fact, by the end of the show, I kind of thought to myself, did any of these characters really learn the error of their ways? Or do they even think that bullying is bad? Like, did Daniel actually do anything to make the bullies realize how terrible their actions were? It was honestly really frustrating to watch, and every character just felt kind of two-dimensional. I didn't really care for any of the characters, even Daniel. Overall, I just didn't really like the show and wouldn't recommend it to anyone. What seemed like an opportunity to take a look at bullying and how it affects people just ended up becoming a power fantasy fighting show. Interestingly enough, the two elements that I didn't like were the story and the characters, which you can't really fault the animation studio for. This is more of an issue with the source material that they're adapting. I don't think the studio is at all to blame for why I disliked it, because all the elements that I disliked came from the webtoon. I'm still looking forward to see Manhwa adaptations by Korean animation studios, and I am really excited to see if they'll animate a webtoon I like. But my final thoughts are, I think you can really just skip this Lookism show. I don't think it's that great, and I think only really big fans of the webtoon will enjoy it. Well, that's pretty much it for my video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you thought about the Lookism show in the comments if you actually watched it. And as always, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you and bye.